Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Before we get started, just a reminder to continue checking into your sessions and rating your speakers today. You have until the lunch break to remain in the competition for the special extra secret session with Gabe. And let's go ahead and get started. Our first speaker today is a senior user experience designer with Google. Please join me in welcoming Nadya Direkova.
Hey you guys, welcome to the session on game mechanics. This is going to be a session about the art and craft of making these things work. My name is Nadya Direkova and I work as a game designer, a game mechanic and a user experience designer at Google in a new products division called Google X. Throughout my career, I've had the pleasure of working with some amazing companies and startups. I started working on games as a grad student at MIT, and I paid my dues in the video game industry. I had a lot of fun, and these days I straddle the works of a game design and a user experience designer, so this is where my insights are coming from. Our first thing that we're going to look at is a surprise. We're going to visit a website, which is called icanhascheeseburger.com. And as I take out this really cute kitten who says, "I loves my blanket," I move on to the next one, which says, "I nap here at the same time every day. I think I'm in a rut." I see there's some kind of a lol at the bottom. And then I look at another image which says, "Sanity runs from my family." And here, bam, I get the cheeseburger collectible, which is called Charts. That invites me to log in, and I go to my profile. I start creating little captions for cute kittens, and I'm starting to have a lot of fun with it. And as I submit my first one, I get a badge for submitting my first lol. I go to see my badge, and I see that they have a profile. And if I keep working on it, I can eventually get a full BA in lolology. There's trophies and other people who have received them. Various different things are happening here. Very interesting. So what's happening is that a very popular site like icanhascheeseburger.com has paired with a game mechanics provider, Big Door, and increased their engagement by 200%. In the process, they have created a list of very interesting patterns like trophies and votes and rating systems and a new language that's coming into play into a lot of designs that we're seeing today. The language of game mechanics didn't always exist in consumer software. It's sort of like a new and recent phenomena, but quickly our users are becoming proficient. And it is our job and my pleasure to study how these things work and what makes them tick and how you can apply them. So game mechanics, to review, are design patterns that promote play and play-like engagement. I'm sure you already know about them. Design patterns in themselves are repeatable solutions to design problems. You can think about them like Lego blocks. You put 1 and 2 together, and then you play, and you make something cool and unique. And this is what I hope you're going to make with your products. I'm sure you're going to make something cool and unique. Your job during this lecture would be to listen for the one game mechanic that you can take away and apply to your work and test it. We will review 16 design patterns, and we're going to talk about 3 categories of game mechanics. In my work, I found that very often it's useful to look at 3 buckets when it comes to user engagement. The first one is the beginner experience. Come and try it. The second one is the social experience, where you're telling users, bring friends. The third one is the one that creates a repeat engagement. It gets users to come back for the first time, which is very important, and it gets them to become frequent customers, which is what you really want. All applications that I've worked on have always wanted to have all of these 3 goals achieved successfully. And let's look at how you can satisfy that using game mechanics. The first is come and try it. During this stage and in this phase, you want to create a great amount of interest and to retain the user's interest so that they understand how you're making their life better and why they should engage, why they should give you that first click that's so precious. We're going to look at a few patterns. The first is really good for generating interest, the idea of prizes and awards. Prizes and awards have always been popular in gaming, and they've been used in game and non-game context alike. My favorite example from the real world is the X Prize. For example, Google has offered a prize to the first private company that lands on the moon and takes a picture of the rover. As you can imagine, these people are competing with missions that only NASA was able to do before, and there's about 30 companies that are in that competition. The X Prize generated a lot of interest around an issue that's very important for humanity. And it's proven, McKinsey had a wonderful report on the value of prizes, and they found that it's actually a really great way to draw social interest. Another pattern, more on like the practical, crafty side, is visual storytelling. As a game designer, we always reserved a few of our assets to create a wonderful beginning of the game that is visual and it's not text heavy. No one wants to play a game that takes 3 pages of rules to describe. But this can also be applied if you're creating software. So for example, when Groupon and Zipcar were introducing their value propositions, which were very new experiences that other people had not tried before, they used a visual language. They used a set of icons to explain what the steps are and to explain the rules in a way that's fast and quick and engaging. A lot of startups are using this methodology right now, explaining the value proposition through icons and text and steps. Another wonderful pattern is the idea of visual cues. For example, City of Immortals has a big yellow sign that says, click here. There is no doubt, you know what you're supposed to be doing. And if you're frustrated about how to move around in a game, which is generally difficult, this solves the problem. Facebook used a similar pattern when they were launching a new feature on their mobile app. Places was a new feature, and it could have gotten lost, except they put a whole screen of darkness around it and created a flashlight effect around that feature. That was the only thing you could click on. There was no doubt. Your click was guided. Another pattern that you're probably familiar with already is the idea of tutorials and coaching. They're used in games in a lot of scenarios. They're also used, as you saw, in Photoshop. Yesterday, one of the wonderful speakers here presented a tutorial experience for Photoshop that teaches you all these wonderful features. A flip side of tutorials is the idea of coaching. Tutorials happen all in the beginning or they're a standalone experience, and coaching is something that guides the user as they're playing or as they're experiencing your application. For example, in Pandora, they have a little orange highlight that tells you, did you know that you can click out of a song if you have heard it too many times? Another pattern is the idea of a reward schedule. Now, Sid Meier, who is the designer of the Civilization, which you probably have played and love, says that you cannot over-reward the player in the first 10 minutes. And it's really true. When you're playing with game mechanics in software, that can take the form of giving them freebies in the beginning, or even giving them a newbie badge, like Foursquare does. But when it comes to the expert, the reward schedule needs to ease off. If experts are winning awards at the same pace as the beginners, they're not going to be as interested. They need to be challenged. So Foursquare, for example, shows you how many more badges there are, and some of them are actually very difficult to achieve. Similarly, in Plants vs. Zombies, there are some achievements that take a really long time in order to get to. I'm still trying to become a multiculturalist in their little mission series. So this is the summary of some of the patterns that can help you create that precious initial engagement: prizes and awards, visual storytelling, visual cues, tutorials and coaching, and the reward schedule. Now let's look into another bucket. This is the social bucket: bring friends. Who does not want people who are using their app to be telling all of their friends that that's something important? Well, if you want that to happen, you have to plan for it. It's not going to happen without you planning for it. So how do you plan for social engagement? There's a couple of patterns you can try. First, you can try to be social from the start by requiring people to form a team, just like in Dodgeball. This is what a lot of applications are doing today by requiring people or offering people to sign up with their Facebook Connect ID. It makes the application social from the get-go, and you're using it together with your friends. Another idea is to design for conversation using a form of social feedback. Now, the general idea in all of these patterns is that you want to enable conversations to happen on your site. This is what makes an application social. A quick way to do it is what happens in Zynga. I play with my friend John, who is in London. We don't play at the same time. He can click a button and send me a tree as a gift, and I can click a button and receive it and send one back. Our exchange has been brought down to clicking of buttons. It's very simple, but on the human side, it feels like a meaningful exchange. So let's look at how this is applied in software. A wonderful pattern that I love is the idea of a thank you button. So in an application like Quora or Aardvark, where you answer and ask and answer questions, a thank you button closes the loop. Somebody who reads the reply that you have posted can say thank you. And it's as simple as that, but it feels really good to receive a thank you when you have put some effort into something. Another wonderful pattern that you can use is the idea of structured feedback. Now, I'm sure all of you have read comments on boards that are unmoderated, and you know they can get out of hand. One way to control that is like what Yelp has done for their compliment system. It's not a comment, it's a compliment. And you can click and select, this is a compliment because it's just a note, or you have a great photo, or you're funny, which is directing the conversation and making sure that it's a little more positive, that it will end up if it wasn't so guided. All of that leads us to another interesting thing, which is the idea of reputation. Reputation is used in games for many purposes, to make players feel good, to establish their value in the community, to generate the kinds of things that one player may be able to do but other won't. And did you know, for example, that Uber Cab, which is a luxury taxi service in San Francisco, allows you to rate not only the driver, but they rate the users too. So if I order a cab, and I am not polite to the driver, I ask them to make too many stops, they can give me a low rating, and that just means I'm not going to get my cabs as fast. It's a great use of a reputation system that establishes the value of the players in the system. Another interesting pattern is the idea of sharing achievements. So all these wonderful things are happening, and people are proud of them. And just like in the Xbox Live, they want to tell the world, I won this, I unlocked this. You can do this by allowing them to tweet if something is meaningful, or providing another way in which players can show the world that they're very proud of their achievements. Now, you have to be a little bit careful here, because a lot of companies burned their channels by sharing too many things that weren't meaningful and were no longer interesting to the people who are listening to them, so that their application and their messaging will start to get tuned out. So you really have to think about what's meaningful before you blast it out. And my favorite is Mischief. In any community, there's going to be trouble, and you have to embrace it. Farmville did exactly that when they allowed the users to TP the farms of their friends on April 1st. And how do you think chat roulette makes money? Do you guys know? Anybody knows? Chat roulette makes money by allowing people to get reported if they're behaving inappropriately. They get redirected to a porn site as a result, and that's the source of revenue. That wraps up our social engagement. Now let's talk about the really valuable player experience. A lot of apps are great about getting the initial engagement, but they don't know how to bring the users back. So let's look at some ways to do this. One of the most powerful ways, perhaps, to do that is keeping score. You can even create a fake score, just like Brain Age created the sense of like a number around how smart you are. My Brain Age is 20 the last time I played. Keeping score can be used to influence behavior in powerful ways. For example, in the Tidy Street project, people's energy consumption on one particular street was written down in chalk on the sidewalk and updated as the energy consumption changed. You betcha that influenced their behavior because their neighbors could see it. Once you have scoring, you have to have throttles. Now that's actually very important. You all know that in baseball or in many games you have the 3 strikes and you're out rule. And games need to be designed the same way. Anytime you create incentives, you have to be careful about how people are going to game the system. A dangerous example comes from the world of Strava, which is an app that allows you to compete on your rides. There was someone who actually, while he was competing and driving over the speed limit, got into an accident and died. As a designer, it's your responsibility to prevent that from happening by punishing players when they're driving over the speed limit or committing any action that may be dangerous to them or to the system. You have to think about it in advance and create throttles to disincentivize the behavior that you don't want to happen. Don't kill any users. Advanced user paths. Now, on the mountain, like in Tahoe, you have bunny slopes and you have advanced slopes. That's a really good thing to incorporate in an app or in an application that's rather complex. For example, Yelp. Most of the people on Yelp spend time on the search results. These are the regular users. But there's a special section of the site and special activities around their business, which are for the elite squad. These are the people who basically make the site run by writing reviews. They have special parties and they care about a different part of the site than the general users. There's two kinds of roles that this site is supporting. Another idea is the sense of a quest queue. Now that's very interesting. Very often, games like Zombie Farm will give you a list of things that you could achieve in no particular order, but they still guide your activity. A quest queue is very interesting in the idea of LinkedIn, where they let you know that you could add a position or a photo to complete the boring process of completing a resume. There's also quest queues that you can self-direct, like in Epic Win, which is an app where you can set your own achievements. The last one that I'll mention is the idea of scarcity. Now, scarcity is important in an economy, and it makes some things more precious than others. Like the example of Zynga, where they launched 3 kinds of fish, and one of them was super, super difficult to obtain, and some portion of the players spend a lot of time and money trying to get this. Scarcity, in a very humorous and wonderful way, is used in the example of the $1 Million homepage. A grad student from the UK wanted to raise $1 million, and he created a site where every pixel was sold for $1. And people could put their logos if they paid $1. And that's what the site looks like, and he has $1 million. In summary, wonderful ways to keep users returning to your site is to keep score, create disincentives and throttles, which are your moral responsibility, have advanced user paths, a skill ladder, quest queue, and many others. We can hardly cover all of it today, but I hope what you got a sense is that there's a lot more than points and badges in the world of game mechanics and game thinking. It's a growing list of patterns that all of us can use as we're trying to incentivize users and learn more about user behavior. And I want to thank the companies that I work with. I interviewed a lot of companies, and as I've been advising them, I'm learning myself. So a big note of gratitude to the companies that have helped me prepare. And that's all, folks.
Thank you, Nadya. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask?
I finished 2 minutes early, so I can give you more time for questions.
Excuse me, could you pass this down?
Hi, yeah. I just wanted to ask if, among all these patterns, you would recommend some with more priority than others, like which of them work better, or in which way you should address the implementation of them?
The best ones are the ones that work for you. So if you remember, your homework was to listen to the one that's applicable for your users. There is no best game mechanic. The best one is the one that solves the job.
All right, good answer.
And you test to find out which does. I mean, you create hypotheses. Basically, like your product is driven around value hypothesis. I think that I'm making their life better in this way, and I think that that game mechanic is going to help me around it. And then you basically go from there in testing.
Great. Any other questions?
Use your time. It's your time. Mm-hmm.
There we go. Got one over here.
Mm-hmm. So perhaps the simplest way to implement game mechanics and track them so you have a sense of responsibility is to introduce them one at a time and track the cohorts of users that they're using them. So if you have an application running, pick one, implement and launch it very quickly, and see if it's doing the job and fine-tune it before you start introducing more. Very often, one game mechanic is all that you need to make an application more successful, but you have to pick and choose carefully and then test. And the best way is that if you're basically doing them in isolation, then you can truly be sure that the effect is caused by the one game mechanic as opposed to the interaction between them. And sometimes that's all you need. Oh, my suggestion is pick one game mechanic and make a bet with your colleagues. I think that if we launch that, we're going to increase metric C, say like user registration, by 5%. and they bet against you, and you say, I want ice cream if I win, or I want a car if I win, and then you launch the damn thing, and then you see what happens, and then you see who wins the bet. Then you gamify them.
I have a question. Sorry. I have a question here as well. Thank you, Nadya. This is probably one of the most practical in terms of actual techniques and approaches to game design.
Thank you, sir.
For me, just to put you on the spot a little bit, what's your favorite game to play at the moment, and what are maybe the 3 key dynamics that you think help to bring you back to it?
My favorite game that I'm addicted to right now, I play it when I wake up and when I go to bed, is Carcassonne on the iPad. Carcassonne is a French castle, and it was turned into a German-style board game, very similar to Settlers, and the iPad version is absolutely amazing. And it's what I really like are the visual cues around knowing, so basically building castles and roads and taking territory, and there's great visual cues around knowing what are the empty pieces that you could take, which really helps you strategy, because it's really strategy intensive. And then I really like the competition aspects of basically trying to, obviously, like it's great in a way where you're continuously scoring yourself. And I guess the strategy, not the game mechanic, that I enjoy the most is basically that it's a really good social game where you can very quickly show it to a friend, and they'll pick it up quickly, and they're not going to be good right away, but as a quality of the game, not so much as a game mechanic, I think it's precious. Give it a whirl.
Great. We've got time for just one more.
Yes, please. Yeah, that's a great question. I think the most interesting game mechanics are around collaborative play that are developing right now, because basically our ability to work in groups, regardless of where we are or who the other person is, has really increased with social networking. So we're smarter than ever when we come together in a social setting. And so I think those will be the most interesting game mechanics going forward around collaboration. And these are actually the ones that activate the female audience, and a lot of people that aren't gamers otherwise want to participate because they feel good about the contribution that they're making to a game. Some of the aspects of Zynga, for example, like helping your neighbors, are great examples of collaboration, even at a very simple level. But they just feel good, and I think they have some goodness to them that I like. So collaboration is my answer.
Hi. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the testing methodology. For example, when you're designing some game elements into your platform, do you A/B test?
Can you speak up?
Oh, do you have a control where you're A/B testing, or?
So it's good to test many times. So basically, I ascribe to the Lean Startup methodology. And if you guys you're not familiar with Eric Ries's work, I highly recommend that you get a sense of what he teaches. I think it's the best framework around developing products. And it basically says this: do not plan, and then test. Develop and test, develop and test, develop and test. And so my tips around testing is to make it quick. And then I think in his book you find wonderful examples of what kind of test you can do. One thing that people forget they can do very often is like a cafe study where you just bring strangers without any big recruitment, or you show what you're making to friends and start getting their feedback. It's like, whatever is like the quickest way to test is very often the best way to test. Also, a lot of people forget to have metrics around what they really think they're trying to achieve. So testing becomes very difficult because you're not tracking it against metrics. So these are some of the tips and tricks like around it. But I mean, testing is in a science in of itself, and the Lean Startup is the best kind of complete framework that I can recommend around that part. Thanks for the good question. Great question.
Thank you so much, Nadya. She has kindly agreed to stick around for a while if anybody has more questions for her. Thank you so much.